In the late summer of 1941, the legendary German general Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox, was preparing to conquer North Africa. He had the tanks, he had the men, and he had the tactical brilliance. But he was missing one critical element: fuel and ammunition. Rommel needed 50,000 tons of supplies delivered across the Mediterranean every single month, just to keep his army moving. But instead of arriving in port, those supplies were resting at the bottom of the sea. Between June and October 1941, the Axis powers lost an agonizing 220,000 tons of shipping. And here is the system glitch that was breaking the German war machine. 90% of those sunken ships were outbound. They were fully loaded. Gicce was the invincible German war machine bleeding out in the middle of the ocean. The answer was a tiny, heavily bombed rock right in the middle of the Mediterranean: Malta. And the apex predators of Malta weren't sleek fighter jets. They were massive, four-engine flying boats known as the short Sunderlands. This is the story of how a handful of British pilots turned the Mediterranean into a graveyard for Axis submarines, and how one man's relentless 30-day hunting streak directly altered Adolf Hitler's invasion of Russia. By late 1941, Hitler and Mussolini realized that Malta was single-handedly starving their North African campaign. Rommel's planned attack on Tobruk had to be postponed twice because he simply didn't have the ammunition. Hitler was so panicked by the Malta threat that he made a massive strategic blunder. He pulled the entire Flieger Corps II out of the critical Russian front and sent them to Sicily just to deal with this tiny island. But the Axis also deployed a terrifying underwater net. They flooded the eastern Mediterranean with 90 submarines, 70 Italian and 20 German. Their mission was simple: sink the Allied coastal convoys, blockade Alexandria, and starve Malta into submission. The Royal Air Force needed to hunt these U-boats down, and to do it, they turned to 230 Squadron and a man named Squadron Leader Kenneth Garside. The short Sunderland was a massive aircraft. The Germans called it the Flying Porcupine because it bristled with defensive machine guns. But it wasn't built for dogfighting, it was built for endurance. It could loiter over the ocean for 14 hours at a time. In January 1942, Squadron Leader Garside took command of Sunderland W-3987 and initiated one of the most ruthless, concentrated anti-submarine hunting streaks of the entire war. While the rest of the squadron's record books showed quiet patrols, Garside's logbook read like a serial killer's diary. In just 30 days, from January 9th to February 7th, Garside personally tracked and attacked 6 different submarines. January 9th, Garside catches a U-boat on the surface. He dives the massive flying boat, drops 3 depth charges, and marks the spot with a flame float. He immediately circles back and drops 4 250-pound anti-submarine bombs. The result? A massive bubble, a 400-yard oil slick, and a destroyed U-boat. January 27th, he spots another sub. He executes 3 separate, terrifying, low-level diving attacks, dropping depth charges set to detonate exactly at 50 and 100 feet beneath the surface to crush the diving sub's hull. January 29th, from 600 feet up, he drops a perfectly timed stick of 8 anti-submarine bombs, straddling the conning tower. As the sea spray clears, Garside watches the shattered stern of the submarine rise vertically out of the water and slide silently into the abyss. February 6th, another straddle of 8 bombs. The submarine is literally blown into disconnected pieces that briefly float on the surface before sinking into the Mediterranean. For the German U-boat crews, the Mediterranean was no longer a hunting ground. It was a trap. You couldn't see the Sunderland coming in the dark, but thanks to primitive ASV radar, the Sunderland could see you. On the night of February 7th, a U-boat crash-dived before Garside could attack. Most pilots would have flown home. Garside simply loitered in the pitch-black sky for an hour and a half. He waited. When the U-boat finally surfaced for air at 2 a.m., Garside's radar pinged. He dropped out of the night sky, dropping 8 bombs right onto the sub's stern, leaving a streak of yellow chemicals in the water. For destroying a submarine and attacking 5 others in a single month, the brass awarded Garside the Distinguished Flying Cross. Many argued it was a bureaucratic insult, A streak this violent and tactically perfect deserved the Distinguished Service Order. It is easy to look at Garside's perfect hunting record and think the RAF had the Mediterranean completely under control. But war is rarely that clean. To understand just how exceptional Garside was, you have to look at what happened just 2 weeks later, on February 22, 1942. A massive, heavily escorted Axis convoy, complete with 2 battleships and 5 cruisers, was spotted heading for Tripoli. The RAF assembled a massive strike wing from both North Africa and Malta. They launched 29 aircraft, Blenheim bombers, Beaufort torpedo bombers, Wellingtons, and flying fortresses. It was supposed to be a devastating, coordinated strike. It was an absolute disaster. The lead shadowing aircraft crashed on takeoff. The first attack group of albacores simply couldn't find the massive convoy. The Beauforts ran out of fuel searching the empty ocean and had to turn back. 4 Blenheims suffered engine failures and aborted. Out of 29 aircraft sent to kill the convoy, exactly 1 single flying fortress managed to find the target and drop its bombs, only to be chased away by intense flak and Messerschmitt 109 fighters. This failure highlighted the terrifying reality of the Mediterranean theater. The ocean was vast. Navigation was primitive. Finding a target in the haze of the sea was incredibly difficult, which is exactly what makes Garside's 6-sub hunting streak such a staggering outlier. By May of 1942, the war had heated up, and the U-boats were increasingly trying to move at night to avoid the daytime patrols. But the RAF had adapted. Garside returned to the skies with a terrifying new trick, the flash bomb. On the evening of May 26th, Garside's radar picked up a U-boat 4 miles away in the dark. He swooped in and dropped 4 250-pound bombs, along with 4 50-foot depth charges. But this time, he had attached flash bombs to his payload. As the explosives hit the water, the flash bombs triggered, turning the pitch-black Mediterranean night into brilliant, blinding daylight for a fraction of a second. In that strobe light flash, Garside clearly saw his bombs smash directly into the U-boat's conning tower. As Garside pulled his massive flying boat up to evade the blast, his radar operator noticed something chilling. 3 other radar blips immediately closed in on the attack coordinate. The U-boat had been surrounded by its own protective escort of Axis fighter planes, circling in the dark. If Garside had been a few seconds slower, the hunters in the dark would have killed him. The short Sunderlands and the crews of Malta didn't just sink ships, they broke the logistical spine of the Axis army in Africa. By denying Rommel his 50,000 tons of monthly supplies, the aircraft based on Malta bought the Allies the most precious resource in war: time. They bought time for the British 8th Army to regroup. They forced Hitler to divide his attention and his air force during the critical invasion of the Soviet Union. We often remember World War II through massive tank battles or massive bombing raids over cities. But the truth is, the fate of entire continents was often decided in the dead of night, in the middle of the ocean, by a single pilot staring at a glowing green radar screen, waiting for a U-boat to break the surface. If the story of the flying Porcupine and the starvation of Rommel changed how you view the Mediterranean air war, hit that like button. It tells the algorithm that the unpolished, gritty truth of these pilots deserves to be heard. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next deep dive into the archives.